Hello, I'm Tracy K. Smith, chair of the Lewis Center for the Arts and a professor of creative writing here at Princeton. I want to welcome you to the 2020 Princeton preview, and I also want to congratulate you for being admitted to Princeton. I'm here with faculty directors of Lewis Center programs and some of our current certificate students, and we're eager to answer any questions you might have about studying the arts at Princeton. Before we start, I want to remind you that this session is being recorded, so you can refer back to it at a later date. And I also want to invite you to reach out to us with any questions that you might not get a chance to ask during this live session. Our contact info will appear on screen at various points during the session. You might want to take a screenshot so that you have ready access to all of those email addresses. And you can also find us on the Lewis Center website, which is arts.princeton.edu. The Lewis Center is the academic unit housing the programs in creative writing, dance, theater, music theater, visual art, and an interdisciplinary program called the Princeton Atelier. We teach seminar-style workshops and classes in performance, creation, and performance studies. Music partners with the Lewis Center in many essential and important ways, but it's a separate department. Music hosted a preview session like this one just last week, and you can access that video for an overview of their offerings. You can also contact Professor Wendy Heller, chair of the music department. The Lewis Center programs offer an array of individual classes. With the exception of the Atelier, we also offer certificates, which are essentially minors in the different art forms. Certificate requirements differ from program to program, but they all involve a combination of coursework and independent work, and they afford you the opportunity to be part of a community of artists and to work closely with the practicing world-class artists on our faculty. Lewis Center certificates are compatible with any major at Princeton. With certain exceptions, the thesis work that Lewis Center students do in their senior year stands in addition to the traditional academic thesis that students complete for their home departments. And our student panelists can tell you what that feels like. So let me introduce my fellow panelists, and they can tell you a little bit more about themselves and the programs they represent. Our faculty panelists are Jane Cox, director of the program in theater, Martha Friedman, director of the program in visual art, and Rebecca Legier, associate director of the program in dance, and this spring, the acting director of the program. And our student panelists are Renako Campbell, a concentrator or major in African American Studies, Jeanette Liu, who is studying at the Woodrow Wilson School, and Abby Meinert, who is a history major. Jane, would you like to start and tell us a little bit about theater at Princeton?
Sure. So I'm Jane. I'm the director of the Princeton Theater Program, and like most of my faculty, I'm a working artist. I'm a lighting designer by profession. I work on Broadway and off Broadway. I like dance, opera, music. In the Princeton Theater Program, we really think that learning theater is best done by making theater in combination with small group classes that are taught by working artists that come to us from New York City. The theater program is pretty aggressively a non-major. We think of theater as a thrilling medium through which to explore the other ideas and thoughts that you're having about the world. And we have a particular focus, I would say, on new work, both plays and music theater. Our program theater season is pretty unique in American education in that it's really driven by our student body. The music theater program do about 15 to 20 theatrical projects a year on various scales. And this year, 5 or 6 of those will be directed by faculty or visiting artists, and the rest by students. In addition, the campus offers an astonishingly large number of student theater groups, and the music department offers productions of operas. We work really hard to be welcoming of all students and all newcomers, but we also offer high-level students for whom theater is a core passion. At the moment, in all 4 years, we have about 112 certificate students, And any Princeton student can take part. Any student can sign up for a theater certificate. You don't have to apply, you simply register. That's it, I think.
Martha, would you tell us about Viz?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. So in the visual arts department, we offer classes in painting, drawing, printmaking, digital and analog photography, sculpture, digital animation, narrative film, documentary film, performance, sound, graphic design. We cover a whole range of mediums. And we also have a robust series of sort of more conceptual based classes, advanced level classes. And I think most importantly for you guys, we hold open a number of seats in our introductory classes for incoming first year students. And I would deeply like to invite you to take those courses, whether or not you consider yourself an artist already and have a robust portfolio, or if you've never touched a paintbrush or cut a piece of wood, that you're, wherever you are on that spectrum, you're more than welcome to take any of our introductory classes. We offer a certificate, and we also have the ability to, we have a practice of art major is what it's called. We work with the art and archaeology department so that visual art students can actually major in art if that's something that they want to pursue at Princeton. The application process for both certificate and practice of art major happens at the end of your sophomore year. And we look at work that you've made during your first 2 years at Princeton. So it's important that if it's something that you're driving towards, a certificate or a practice of art major, that you immediately start taking studio classes, because that's the work we want to see if it's something you want to focus on in the future. I'll quickly say that one of the most exciting things for me about teaching visual arts at Princeton is the faculty. The faculty in the visual arts program are all extremely exciting and successful working artists. And when I say successful, what I mean is when they're not with you, teaching you, they're back in their studios making work for exhibitions in museums and galleries around the world. And so they're bringing that back to the classroom to share with you all that sort of professional know-how and sort of cultural output. They're sort of sharing that with you. And it's, I think, a really exciting thing. Because so many artists live in New York City, we sort of get the pick of the litter of people who are fantastic artists and fantastic professors. I myself am a sculptor. I make a lot of work using rubber and steel and concrete and glass, sort of asking questions about maybe what the difference between a material, a thing, and a body is. I'm excited to meet all of you soon, hopefully.
Thank you. Rebecca, can you talk to us about dance?
I did the start talking without unmuting, first error of Zoom. Hello, everybody. I'm Rebecca Legier. I am the Associate Director of the Dance Program and currently the Acting Director as well. I wanted to sort of reiterate a lot of the things you're hearing, that the dance faculty is this extraordinary pool of people coming from New York and Philadelphia and across the country actually to enhance our offerings. Dance just celebrated its 50th year on campus, and there are currently over 20 courses every year we are offering, with 5 full-time faculty, over 18 different part-time lecturers coming in. And what you'll find is a really robust dance program that many people call their home on campus. That these studios become, as you can see one behind me now, this is one of our beautiful studios as part of the LCA. That our courses are really geared on these 2 levels you've heard, that we're welcoming to all sorts of introductory levels. We have an introduction to breakdancing, a dance across cultures. We have introduction to hip hop, as well as introduction to ballet, that there's places for entry to all aspects of engaging in dance as a physical thinking tool. And then we also have performance courses that are really, say you danced a long time ago and you didn't get to do it in high school and you're ready to jump back in, or say you really are career passionate about dance and keeping dance in your life and trying to find that perfect place where you can equally balance the academic interests and your artistic interests. We actually have places and abilities to challenge you and keep you growing and changing throughout your 4 years. Like Martha has said, we have this great geographic position where we're able to bring artists from New York City and from Philadelphia, and all of our faculty are choreographers, performers, dance study scholars, all bringing that sort of richness of their research expertise to campus in all sorts of different ways. In addition to our courses, we have this kind of miraculous thing we call our co-curricular offerings, and those are free drop-in classes that happen every single day. So even if you cannot commit to a course for your full time, you can drop in. There's a hip hop foundations course. This semester we had a dance or music theater course. And there's daily ballet classes. There's conditioning, there's yoga, and these are there for you to stay involved in dance and keep dance as part of an underlying sort of body awareness tool, an underlying physical development tool. And if you are on that sort of professional track of thinking of yourself as that and you want to maintain your daily training, you've got that there. And so what we really envision is a program where it's almost a choose your own adventure, that every semester might be a really different way that you engage in dance, but that we have all sorts of ways that you can do that. And our performances, we've recently had works in the repertory by Crystal Pite and Bill T. Jones and Trisha Brown, and we really work to sort of think about what are the works of canon, but then we also commission new works from some of the most exciting artists around. Recently, Raja Feather Kelly, who was on the cover of Dance Magazine just a few weeks ago, was there and is coming back in the fall. So we can talk more about who those guests are and how you can interact with them, but that we have this really robust sense of coursework, curricular work, an ongoing community of people really committed to the arts. There's lots of stories of people coming, taking their first dance class at Princeton and ending up extremely involved in the field and it changing their life. And there's other people who only take one class at Princeton and say it's one of their most fulfilling experiences of their lives and don't wait. So we really hope that the dance program is there for you at any moment to engage in asking these questions in the studio, in spaces with other people interested in those kinds of events too.
Thank you. I'll tell you a little bit about the creative writing program. We offer courses in fiction, creative nonfiction, poetry, screenwriting, and occasionally we offer special courses like the lyric essay or writing about art. And there are also literary translation courses that happen on a regular basis. Our students are working in classes that are generally about 10 students large, with a faculty member who's a major living writer. Our courses are open to students from freshman year onward, and like the visual arts program, we save spaces in the fall for incoming first year students in all of the introductory level classes. So it's the best time to jump in and discover, hopefully, that you have a real passion and a love for what writing about your questions and your experiences can offer you. Students who want to pursue a certificate in creative writing apply in the spring of their junior year to write a book-length original thesis. And every year there are between 24 and 30 certificate students who are accepted, and they work one-on-one with faculty members throughout the year and submit creative theses in April. And I think that it's typically believed that English and comp lit students are the ones who are most suitable for creative writing theses, but in reality, we have students coming from across the disciplines, neuroscience, engineering, physics, as well as English and classics and history and African American studies. And what I found working with students over the years is that the creative work provides a really useful lens for asking sometimes very similar questions to what are being asked in the other disciplines, the home departments. And sometimes it's a way of turning in a completely different direction and thinking about all of the other things that are real and vital to you as a person. I know that we have at least one creative writing student, so I'm going to let the students jump in from here and tell us about their experience of the Lewis Center and also how the Lewis Center relates to the other work that you've been doing at Princeton. So Renako, would you get us started?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Renako. I'm a current junior. I'm majoring in African American Studies, and I am pursuing a certificate in dance. The Lewis Center has been, without a doubt, the most rewarding aspect of my Princeton career. I've been able to participate in multiple Princeton dance festivals, co-curricular classes, works by guest choreographers, and I was actually able to win the Alex Adam Award last summer that allowed me to travel throughout Europe and pursue various dance programs and festivals that will go towards my senior dance thesis research, which has also been one of my favorite parts of my Princeton experience, the senior dance thesis, where you get to work with students who are kind of creating this capstone project. And I've been able to participate in 4 of those, which has been really incredible. I'm also working on my own, so now I have something to go off of. I consider myself a hybrid performer, so I prefer contemporary styles, but I have a lot of classical training, and then I also have some training in urban street styles. So I love that the Lewis Center is a huge, the dance program specifically, it has all of those styles, and it allows me to keep pursuing them at a high level, and also try things that I've never tried before. So I highly encourage you to get involved with dance sooner than later, and don't wait. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeanette, can you talk to us about your Lewis Center experience?
Hi, everyone. Good to meet you. My name is Jeanette. I'm a current senior studying public policy in the Woodrow Wilson School, and I am getting a certificate, or got a certificate, in visual arts. I, without a doubt, visual arts and 185 Nassau Street at Princeton has been the best part of my time at school. I think I would just have a fundamentally different experience without it. I've just come out of creating my thesis show. I've had quite a roundabout way of sort of navigating visual arts within the department. I applied sophomore year and got in as a film student, and sort of since then have explored photography, gone back to film, then went into painting, and then had a thesis show about 3 weeks ago in sculpture. And so it's just really an incredible way to be very interdisciplinary, and sort of have seen myself and sort of my peers really sort of explore their way through it. And people are, again, sort of like creative writing, people are coming to visual arts from a multitude of backgrounds. There's people in my year, there's about 20 students in the senior class, and there's people coming from electrical engineering and from computer science. I'm coming from public policy, and other peers are coming from home departments like neuroscience. I also, like Renako, have gotten thesis funding over the past 2 years. Thesis funding, I spent the past summer in Shanghai and was able to get thesis funding for that as well. And sort of to reiterate Martha's point, Martha's actually my advisor, and so really being able to see and have growing relationships with a lot of faculty, most of whom are based in New York City and are incredible artists. And sort of on the note of transitioning from visual arts to sort of online for the rest of the semester, and sort of onwards, a lot of seniors unfortunately have not been able to complete their thesis shows in person, but we are hosting them online at 185nassau.art. And so it's a sort of really interesting and sort of media theoretical way of seeing how we can take physical spaces and translate them to online. And we're actually creating a book, sort of physical copy, and sending them back to everyone, sort of all the seniors, and sort of taking that online content and then turning it back into something physical. So we're trying to work with what we have and sort of the constraints that had been put upon us, and hopefully turn into something really great.
Thank you. Thanks for mentioning that too, about the online world that so many of us now feel, like we are inside of. I was talking to one of my colleagues in creative writing, Kirsten Valdez-Quaid, who's a fiction writer, and she said, it's so strange to be adapting the way that we teach and work with students, but as artists, we're always responding to the crises of the moment, and we're always looking for new ways of embodying our questions and thinking about experience. And so in some ways, the Lewis Center is a really great way of being in this moment and being part of a community that's incredibly resourceful and incredibly committed to finding new ways of being together, even if they're not physical. And a lot of the artists on the faculty are also experiencing a similar kind of virtual shift to exhibition of work. Abby, will you talk to us a little bit about your Lewis Center experience?
Absolutely. Welcome, everyone. I'm Abby. I'm a current senior. I'm a history major and creative writing certificate, which means I just turned in my creative writing thesis and I'm about to turn in my history thesis. It's an exciting time. What's been really, so one of the reasons I selected Princeton as my top choice school really was the creative writing faculty. That was such a huge draw for me, and I have not been disappointed at all. These are people I've looked up to, you know, heroes of mine who I'd been reading and loved their work. And then to find that they were amazing people too, and really cared about seeing you grow was really exciting too. The workshop classes in the creative writing department are, you know, 10 people, you and this huge writer who you really look up to. And so that was a huge deal coming in first year. And then as I sort of went through my 4 years, I found that I kept branching out more and more into interests I didn't know I had. I've taken a course in every one of the programs within the Lewis Center by now and have gotten into so many interdisciplinary things, in experimental sound and performance art, and have had so many opportunities to perform and interact with all kinds of heroes and just make work I never could have envisioned myself making before this. My creative writing thesis also has made sort of connections to my historical research, which was an exciting thing to uncover and work through. So my kind of putting documentary poetry that uses archival sources as found language, you know, everything just is really connected in a lot of ways that the Lewis Center has encouraged and brought out this interdisciplinary like approach for me, and it's been life-changing.
Thank you. I'm looking at our questions, and I also am aware of one question that does come up a lot, which has to do with would an engineering major, for example, be able to pursue a visual arts certificate? How does that kind of work balance in an actual schedule? What is it like to write 2 theses? I know everybody on the panel can speak to that somewhat. Who wants to start us off with a sense of what it's like to pursue something that is perhaps quantitative or far from the art form that you are also committed to practicing?
Yeah, I guess I can kind of speak to that. I'm very much in the process right now with a quantitative thesis due in about 6 days. It's definitely been a trying time, but it's been really interesting to throw myself whole in disciplines. And so the past like 3 and 4 months of this year has been really, it's at once being able to balance 2 very different types of thinking, but also a lot of one way of thinking has really been able to reinforce the other. And so I think I've really been able to grow in a very balanced and really interesting way throughout my senior year. And obviously for a lot of students, doing 2 and 3 and multiple theses, it definitely is not easy, but it is absolutely something that has marked my senior year as a period of growth for sure. And it has been an incredible experience.
The challenges and the rewards of working in disparate modes, I think, also has a lot to do with what makes, what goes into the decision of choosing a liberal arts education like what Princeton offers versus a conservatory education that you might get elsewhere. One of the reasons that we don't offer degrees in most of the programs is because we believe that art comes out of wrestling with questions that live in different areas. And so we hope that what we're doing by encouraging you to major elsewhere is feeding the art that you do end up making. Rebecca, do you want to add to that?
I think just a little bit more of that, what our engineering students have found a lot, or EB, or some of the really complicated time commitment majors like architecture, is that dance sometimes is what makes it possible, or your art making thing is what is the balance and allows you to go more deeply into both. And so that, yes, every semester is going to come with different scheduling dilemmas, and sometimes different choices will have to be made based on, you know, balancing all of those things, but that the twinning of them is what makes them each enrich each other.
I'm looking at a question that has to do with time commitment. What is the average time commitment of a theater production or a theater certificate?
So in terms of production, we try to offer various scales of production so that it's something you might be able to work on a production for course credit, and that might be like 150 to 200 hours to participate in a show of a large scale. But we also offer projects where you can come and work on a show that rehearses for 2 days and then does one evening's reading. So we definitely try to offer opportunities across the spectrum of ability to commit to time. And when it comes to doing your own independent work in your senior year, we also make it possible to do it on a spectrum that can accommodate the different kinds of majors that people have. As to the commitment for a certificate, it's a 5-course commitment. So it's 5 classes over the course of your time at Princeton at a minimum, and senior year independent work. And also tech credit hours, which probably amount to about 100 hours over the course of your pre-senior years.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what that means, tech credit hours?
Tech credit hours. So we ask basically our theater season is a pyramid scheme. Our junior certificate students choose the season through an extended kind of proposal and mentorship process. The juniors choose the season for their senior year, and all the students in freshman, sophomore, junior years choose to at some point support that process by being on the run crew or being the light board operator or being the sound engineer. And hopefully through that process you can learn something new about a different aspect of theater than you might have participated in. But you're doing it in support of the senior year theater season, and they will have done it for senior when they were underclassmen.
I'm looking at a question about dance, Rebecca and Renako. Can you take dance classes at Princeton even if you've never danced before?
Should we say it together? 1, 2, 3. Yes! Yeah, so that's what I was mentioning in our introduction to dance courses, and there are about 5 or 6 at least each semester. Introduction to dance across cultures. We have an introduction to Africanist dance practices. We have a breaking class. We have hip hop class, introduction to ballet. So we actually had a certificate student once we decided to grant a certificate to because they had taken a dance course every single semester that was an introduction course for 8 semesters. And so while they hadn't necessarily achieved sort of a career aspiration, that wasn't what it was about. It was about this ongoing commitment to prioritizing dance in this way in their life. So it's that robustness of diversity of experience that we really hope to offer all people on campus in all ways.
I think about Silas Reiner, who was a student of mine years ago in creative writing, and who was a beginning dance student in his first or second year at Princeton, who was also an athlete and discovered a passion that's now a career. And it happens because these are classes where people are welcome to come and learn how to think differently, right? Jane, can you talk about the curricular opportunities for musical theater composition? I know there are a lot of musical theater composer guest artists. Are there chances for independent study with any of them or with any of the faculty?
Absolutely. I mean, I think I would speak for all the programs when I say there's chances for independent study with the faculty and the visiting artists. So all the exciting artists that come to Princeton, I know Gabriel Cahane's coming this year. There's a lot of really exciting music theater artists that visit. Will Davis will be here next year. There's also a strong, one of the great strengths of the music theater program, which is pretty new, is that the music department at Princeton is incredibly strong. And so we're working with a lot of music majors who like to make theater as well. And this past year we've done 2, and I think next year we're going to do 3 original music theater pieces written by students who are either majoring in music or getting a music certificate in composition. So there's a strong crossover between the music and theater in all kinds of different genres, like from classical to pop to rock to whatever, you name it.
I have a couple of questions about visual art. The first one, I'll ask you both, and then Martha, you can begin to answer them. And I'm an engineering student with a long-held interest in visual art. I'd love to take some pure studio classes, but I'm very interested in the intersection of engineering and art, specifically in design. What opportunities does the Lewis Center offer in and out of the curriculum for me to synthesize those interests? And then the other question is simply, what are the studio spaces like that students at Princeton can work in to make art?
I'll take the second question first. The studio spaces are, in my opinion, amazing. The junior studio. So if you apply for a certificate or a practice of art degree and you're admitted, you and your cohort as juniors, you start as juniors, basically get the 4th floor of 185 Nassau all to yourselves, basically. It's actually one of my favorite rooms in all of Princeton's campus, and it has beautiful skylights, and it's basically a space for you each to carve out your own studio together and to figure out what it means to be a working artist that's making projects outside of a class assignment. So it's really a place for you to figure out what it is that you want to make, what's important to you.
This is actually part of that from the 4th. My virtual background is actually on the 4th floor.
Right, great. Many students tell me that their experience on the 4th floor with their junior cohort is the sort of life-changing experience about what being an artist can mean for them, their lives, and their other pursuits. When you become a senior, you then get a more private, slightly larger, more private studio that you share with 1 or 2 other senior visual arts students, and which is also incredible to have your own sort of private space to work on your work. The previous question, so we've started offering classes that really do try and bridge kind of a design, maybe an industrial design, engineering, a sort of speculative future kind of sort of asking questions about what visual arts, a sort of speculative questions about design and actual design. Annie Liu, who's a fellow right now in the Lewis Center, she's worth looking up, A-N-I-L-U-I. She's an incredible artist who really, is educated at MIT and also got a degree in RISD, an MFA in RISD, and she's really working exactly at this intersection that you're asking about. And so she teaches a really interesting course on design and sort of speculative futures. We also offer really great courses in graphic design, and often engineers and computer science students really explore this sort of intersection, this intersection that you're talking about in those graphic design courses.
I wonder if I could just dive in and say that, as a theater designer that runs the theater program, we also have a particular strength in the crossover with design and engineering. We have a lot of engineering students, in fact, mostly engineering students and computer scientists taking a lot of design classes. And we have a relationship with the Studio Lab, which is part of the Council on Science and Technology that's really strong, working with them on classes like storytelling and technology. And so there's a lot of crossover there between like Viz, theater, engineering. There's a lot of students who are interested in those intersections.
Rebecca, I know you are interested in those intersections as well. Can you talk about how they connect to the work you and others are doing in dance?
Yeah, I might want to bring up also the Atelier program, because so for example, the way the faculty themselves are collaborating across these lines. I'm currently involved in a collaboration. Actually, it's going to be a 2-year field of research between an engineer on the engineering faculty and myself as a choreographer, and we're exploring adaptable stiffness in nets from a dance perspective. And so actually it was held as a course this semester, but it's ongoing part of research over the next 2 years that has the potential to engage students a lot. So I think the role all of that kind of research on campus at those intersections of where the architecture school, design, visual arts, the studio lab that Jane talks about. There's also a course called, well, help me people, Transformations in Engineering in the Arts. And it's held both as an engineering course and an arts course. And there's visitors from each one of the arts disciplines coming in, and you're thinking about how to transform things across using engineering at the core. So I think it's a really current and very welcome, and lots of people sort of looking at these things from many different points of view.
I have a question for our students. What was your favorite class in the Lewis Center? This might be a way for prospective students to even understand a little bit more about how our classes are shaped and what you produce.
I guess I can start. This is a hard question because I have loved every single class I've taken in the Lewis Center for sure. But as far as dance goes, a highlight of my Princeton experience has been participating in the Princeton Dance Festival. So it is an opportunity to work with a choreographer on either a set piece of repertory or a new work. And you're in process with this choreographer for a whole semester, twice a week. And it's just so exciting to work together with a cast and see a super exciting result during the festival. And then my favorite spring course, because during the spring, the courses kind of shift to, a lot of the dance courses at least, are a little bit more technique and exploration based as opposed to performance repertory based. So we have a ballet course, we have a contemporary course, and then we have a lot of other introduction courses as well. So my favorite spring course was, it was Dance 408, which was approaches to contemporary practices and forms or something like that, where essentially you work with many, many dance guests from the New York City area, Philly, and we got to work with Shannon Gillen, Riley Watts, all these really exciting professionals. And the class is comprised of all years, varying experiences prior to Princeton, so it's just great to have all these different influences in one room. So I loved those classes a lot.
Abby and Jeanette, what have your favorite LCA classes been like?
It's hard for me to compare across because they're also different and also great, but I've loved every single one of my creative writing classes because the professors have been so like excellent to work with. And then I would also throw in, I think a big like changing class for me, Renako was in this with me with the creating your own biomythography with Jamil Olahokosko. I'm not sure if I pronounced it exactly correctly, I'm sorry. But that was really, he's both a poet and a curator and a performance artist and has very visual, like costume-based things. And so we got to see him perform in Montreal on a trip, and we also got to create our own performances along those lines. And that was one of the most sort of interdisciplinary things I've really gotten to work on in a while. And then recently I took a course, and Jeanette was in this with me, with Laurie Anderson and Ardo Lindsay, who are two actual heroes of mine. And then we got to perform with them in New York City, which was like so cool. And I'll never forget that. So yeah.
Yeah, I think Abby got like a signing deal with Laurie Anderson after the performance, which was crazy. Abby was freaking out. Yeah, I think I haven't taken any creative writing or dance classes, which is something that I wish I had done during my time at Princeton. So I can only speak for the visual arts classes. I think it's also hard for me to sort of pick a favorite because they've all really structured how I want to sort of go about my practice and how I want to learn in such different ways. But I think if I had to choose, I think the two classes that I've taken that were my first sculpture class and my first film class at Princeton were very sort of striking. I took a experimental documentary class freshman year, and it was sort of the first class that I'd taken that really countered how I've been thinking about film sort of throughout high school, which was a very narrative structure. And sort of being introduced to like the essay film was something very incredible for me. And I took a class called Extraordinary Processes my sophomore year, which was sort of at the intersection between environmental engineering and visual arts. And we sort of were working within engineering structures and foundations and sort of aesthetic design to create a lamp. And it fulfilled our sort of science lab class that we have to take sort of as a liberal arts foundation at Princeton, and me being the complete non-scientist I am, it was really a really incredible way to fulfill that. And sort of now today, that class has turned into making a bed. So you can just sort of go to class and be working on a bed for a whole semester, which is really incredible. And sort of goes to show how sort of diverse the visual arts classes here at Princeton are.
We have a question about diversity as one of our values at the Lewis Center. Can you talk about how diversity is fostered in the arts at Princeton? I feel like I want to start by saying that diversity, a commitment to diversity, is really one of our core values. We feel like art is one way of creating a robust and mindful community, asking questions that begin in many different places and reach out to touch what it feels like and what it means to be alive in the world, thinking about other people. I know that the classes that we offer and the programs that we offer in the Lewis Center are also a kind of haven for many people who are deeply committed to these questions and who are also struggling in different ways with being in America, being in a body, being in a community where there is injustice, and where not everyone has a vocabulary for talking about it. I feel like our faculty and our students are really committed to learning from one another and raising the broader awareness beyond the arts of the value of diversity and equity, inclusion. I feel like the Lewis Center also models a kind of responsive openness to student input that has been instructive for other regions of the university. I'd love to hear from others as well. Martha and Jane.
I was just going to dive in and say, I think the core question that we ask when we go about putting together our theater season with our students, and one of the reasons that we recently started a junior seminar, was to really continue to place the question of, whose story are we telling and who gets to tell it, both in the writing, the directing, on stage, and in design. And I think that question is on the top of our students' mind, and it's on the top of our faculty's mind, and it's at the heart of how we put together our theater season.
Yeah, I can just echo that a little bit. In visual arts, one of the most perplexing, I think, and difficult questions that we sort of constantly ask ourselves in our community is who's getting represented by whom, and who's allowed to represent images or depictions of others. And so this is a really difficult, thorny, and important question that we in the visual arts are constantly asking ourselves and constantly talking to our students and our faculty about, and teaching to that question, whether it's really a class about portraiture specifically with a photo camera, like who's pointing the camera at whom and whose story are we listening to, like sort of Jane and Tracy just mentioned, that these questions are very deep and can get very complicated. And the visual arts department takes it on as a responsibility to ask these hard questions with our students as many times as we need to, and to really make sure that student body represents as many different perspectives as we can.
Mm-hmm. In many ways, these are the most important questions that we can be asking, regardless of the context. And we're committed to finding new vocabularies, new directions to listen in, and bringing in a wide range of artists who are on the faculty and guest artists, fellows, who are also bringing in new insight and challenging us to think in better ways about questions of identity and community and equity, value, etc. Rebecca, were you going to add? I feel like I cut you off.
No, it's fine. You guys have all spoken so beautifully, but just reiterate in the dance how those questions manifest are along similar lines, and through partnerships with other programs, trying to continually ask who's not being seen, who's invisible, who has visibility, And as that relates to emerging choreographers, established choreographers, what repertoire we can do, we can perform, we have access to. And then also balancing that with the idea of how do we draw all aspects of the campus into the studios in dance.
Renako, you have served as a peer arts advisor. Can you tell us a little bit about what that role has been like, what the focus is?
Sure. So being a peer arts advisor, you serve as a liaison essentially for the student body and the faculty. So a lot of what we do is attend meetings with program directors and Lewis Center faculty and just talk about what's missing, what we would like to see from student perspectives, as all the directors have reiterated, who's not being heard, what could we change, how could we make this a more accessible and truly representative department within the Lewis Center. And then also we commit ourselves to advising students, especially students who are kind of on the fence about if they should participate in the Lewis Center, especially marginalized voices, those who are maybe a part of more vulnerable communities, how they can kind of see themselves working in the Lewis Center and sharing their stories as well. So it's just kind of trying to work on the ground and facilitate all of this work, because it's hard to kind of just rely on a few decision makers who have all of their own kind of things going on. It's nice to kind of spread that effort to really keep the space as inclusive and welcoming as possible.
Thank you. All right, we have a list of questions that continues. Can you please talk about possibilities for students who'd like to pursue filmmaking?
Yeah, do it. So we offer classes in documentary film and narrative film, and the creative writing program offers classes in screenwriting. So there's some collaboration there, because often those classes are taken by the same students. And if film is something you want to focus on as a major, as a practice of art student, or as a certificate student, you can do that, and you can apply to do that, and then you'll get paired with an advisor who is someone who works in film. So you'll work with sometimes a photographer, but most often you'll work with a filmmaker whose work you find inspiring, or there's something really connecting you and that professor in terms of where you maybe see your work going. We have great facilities for filmmaking and editing, and equipment, to cameras and sound equipment and things that is yours to use. I hope that answers your question. If you have a more specific question about film, I can take a stab at it.
Okay, I'll watch the box from incoming questions. Here is a creative writing question. For students who love creative writing but have never before received formal training, how realistic is it to work towards a creative writing thesis? I'll say that it's very realistic, and it is even more so if you start in your first year. For the thesis in creative writing, we urge students to take 4 classes before applying for the thesis. Many take more, and you must choose the area that you want to focus on for the thesis, so poetry or fiction, translation or screenwriting. It's great to take multiple classes in the same genre, which might mean making sure you start early enough to make space and time to do that. And there are lots of ways of becoming a better writer in kind of other programs as well. More and more of our classes are kind of being cross-listed with other programs and departments. The Humanities Council hosts a nonfiction course with John McPhee every other year, and some of our students who are writing theses have taken that class and so added to their repertoire. There's another question that I feel like I can touch on about grading. How is grading conducted in the Lewis Center? It varies from class to class, program to program, but many of our classes are pass-fail, or what at Princeton is called PDF. We do that because we know that art in many cases is about being willing to risk failure, doing something that you might not yet have mastered, but that can help facilitate a kind of growth or even a breakthrough. And it's easier to do that if you're not worried about getting an A on every single thing that you do. And so we urge a kind of robust participation and an active commitment to growth. And one way of doing that is by teaching pass-fail courses. But others of the courses are given traditional letter grades. And does anyone want to speak to that? Martha, I know that some of the Viz courses are graded. Creative writing, all PDF.
Yeah, some of the Viz courses are graded, but unlike kind of grading in other parts of university, we don't grade students against each other. You know, we're not sort of trying to find this curve, because that would be insane, to sort of say what this student wanted to make in their artwork, how does that, you know, stack up to what this student wanted to make. The grading really is sort of on a, it's about what the professors and you as a student have sort of discussed and learned, whether that's technically or conceptually, and whether or not they sort of think, you know, you really pushed yourself or took a risk or really, you know, worked hard or not. And it's really kind of a kind of subjective conversation between you and the professor. I will say in my classes, which I think is pretty standard, there's a sort of sense that you kind of come in the class, you sort of come in with just to get really to the nitty gritty here, you kind of come in with a B, which is a great way to start. Like, you have a B, that's great. And if you sort of do the assignments and you do the work and you participate, you leave with a B. If you stop doing the work and you slow down and you don't show up, your grade will go down. And if you really take those assignments and those projects and really make them yours and take risks and go nuts with them, your grade will go up to an A. And I think that's a kind of maybe a general way to kind of think about at least the way the visual arts courses are graded.
I have two theater questions in front of me. Can you talk about new theatrical works that are commissioned on campus? For example, I know Jason Robert Brown was here a few years back. And another question for theater, do the guest artists come in for a workshop, teach a course, or some combination of both?
Well, I'll take those two questions together, and I think they speak to really the whole Lewis Center. I think one of the things that's extraordinary about the Lewis Center is how porous it is to working artists. So there's an astonishing number of different ways that working artists, theater artists, visual artists, dancers, all kinds of artists are with us through the Princeton Arts Fellows programs, through visiting artist programs. So the faculty in all these programs is, at least in theater, largely made up of visiting artists from New York who come in and teach a course or direct a show or participate in a student production. In other programs, the balance is a bit different between working artists, but in every area, there's a huge preponderance of working artists that kind of flow through in a variety of different ways. It's one of the great pleasures of the university and the many fellowships and ways that we have to bring people in because of the resources of Princeton. So just to put a couple of examples to speak to the commission question, right before we had to go remote, we were about to open a new musical by a visiting artist, Cesar Alvarez, called The Universe is a Small Hat, which was a participatory science fiction musical we were going to do. Last year, we commissioned a new piece of music theater about clothing mountains in Africa, like left behind, discarded clothing mountains. Called We Were Everywhere, commissioned by a couple of artists, including Sharifa Ali, who teaches for us. And the year before that, we had Migdalia Cruz and Mac Wellman here. So every year there's theatrical commissions of that sort of scale. And then we have theater artists coming in and making more like smaller devised works with students. And we expect to have Sam Pinkleton here in the fall making something. So he's a Tony Award winning theater artist who worked on Natasha, Pierre, and the Great Comet of 1812. So he'll be here in the fall working with our students in some capacity. So a lot, in short.
I think we're ready to do another screenshot of everybody's contact information. So maybe we can just briefly introduce ourselves and what our program affiliations are again. I'm Tracy K. Smith. I am the chair of the Lewis Center, and I am a faculty member in creative writing. Maybe my colleague Jane Cox can introduce herself.
I'm Jane Cox. I'm the director of the theater program, and I teach design.
Okay. Martha Friedman.
I'm Martha Friedman. I'm the director of the visual arts program, and I'm a sculptor, and I teach sculpture.
Okay, and Rebecca Legier. Oh, you're muted.
I'm the associate director of the program in dance, and as well as the acting director for this academic year. I'm a senior lecturer in dance. I'm a choreographer, and I teach choreography and create works with the students, as well as lead interdisciplinary collaborations.
Okay, and because some of our students are peer arts advisors and contactable, maybe we can get those introductions again. So Renako, would you reintroduce yourself?
Sure. I am Renako. I am a current junior in the Department of African American Studies and pursuing a certificate in dance.
And Abby?
I'm Abby, history and creative writing. Please feel free to shoot me any questions about either of those things. I also happened to notice there was a question in the Q&A about tap dance. I love tap dance so much that it's like a personality trait, so please email me about that. Feel free to reach out.
Okay, and Jeanette?
Hi everyone, I'm Jeanette. I'm a senior and I'm majoring in the Woodrow Wilson School of Public Policy and getting a certificate in visual arts. And again, like Abby said, feel free to reach out to me as well.
Okay. And I'll reiterate that. Please feel free to reach out to all of us with any new questions or lingering questions. We're very eager to be of use to you as you make this decision. And thanks for joining us. We look forward to meeting you next year. Take care.